Hello, y'all. Happy Thursday. I'm gonna mute folks because just to make sure it's not chaotic. If you haven't been to one of my events for Black women photographers before, um, then please drop your name in the chat and your location. Always love to see where people are tuning in from. Uh, Erica, it's totally fine. What are you listening to? Um, and please, please turn on the camera. We'd love to see your faces as well. It's nice and intimate. Aundre is here. And it's going to be a good conversation, a good chat all around, and a lot of things to learn. I'll be taking notes as well. I see some folks introducing in the chat. That's amazing. Again, if you're able to turn on your camera, I would love to see somebody's face. I know some people are working and whatnot. I am too. There we go. Some beautiful Black faces. Okay. Aundre, I'll let you introduce yourself because I feel like you don't need an introduction, but please introduce yourself. You're on mute.
I said, first of all, Polly, only one of us is verified all over the internet, and that's you.
Oh my God.
The only person who does an introduction is you. So wow, shout out to everyone that I know it's the middle of the workday, but thank you for choosing to do something and having the thing be this thing that Polly and I are doing. Shout out to Jabari calling from the car. I see you, girl. Yeah, no, I know. You might want to watch this recording later. I'm gonna have to zoom in on some stuff so you can see it. But hey, it's really lovely to meet everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your workday. I know that the middle of the day on a Thursday is actually hyper productive because everyone's trying to punt it for Friday. My name's Aundre Larrow. I am calling you. I feel like we're doing like a radio thing from Brooklyn, New York, and Bushwick. I have known Polly for a couple of years. She was sweet enough to call me before she started Black Women Photograph to ask me if it was a good idea, like if it made sense. And I was like, why would I hold your shine back? And now years later, here we are. And my girl's out here winning awards, you know what I'm saying, getting sponsorships for everybody. And for the folks that are watching, whether you've interacted with Polly once or twice, she hates this, so I have to do it now. Just know that the amount of work that has gone into making something that can edify all of you is not something that was done in one day or 1 week. It has been years of practice of work. And I think really a testament to what she believes about community. And so I want to say thank you to all of you for showing up. And today we're just going to do like a Lightroom 101 with some Photoshop. But that doesn't mean when this is over that you can't speak to me. I'm not like, it's not that kind of situation. And, I'm just excited to meet everyone. So I'm calling from Bushwick. I grew up in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm Jamaican. If there's other Jamaicans in here, let me know. You know what I'm saying? I was actually born in Jamaica, the country, not Jamaica, Queens. People get that mixed up. I am a visual artist. So yesterday I directed a colon cancer PSA that had Charlemagne and Vashti in it. And then shout out Jessica. And then last week I did a commercial photography job for Citizens Bank. So my clients are kind of varied. I'm 30. I'm a Leo. I know that's important to folks. I need to tell people that. And it's been a long road to get to here. And I know there's many more things that I hope to do in my life, but the root of it is my understanding of color. And it's really taken me a lot of places. The reason that I'm the person that's going to be talking about Lightroom and Photoshop today is I had the pleasure of doing Adobe Creative Residency in 2017 and 18. And then 2020 and 2021, I was a Lightroom ambassador for Adobe. So I have made a small part of my business and online presence, teaching people like you who already take great images to get that last kind of 15% out in your edit to get it as incredible as you envision it to be. So one thing that I think would be really helpful, everyone make sure you put your @s and your socials in the chat, not just for me or Polly, but for other folks to see. It's really warm in this room. I think it's Jack and I. And then let's just get into it. If you have additional questions, you can, it is frighteningly easy to get in contact with me. I actually just took my phone number off Instagram because it was really irritating to get phone calls from strangers. And I know you as women understand that, so I'm sure you are not as stupid as I am and just put your phone number places. You can DM me after the fact. I also, Polly knows throughout, I'm encouraging y'all to subscribe to my YouTube. I also have a Discord channel where it's called Good Questions with Aundre, where folks ask questions about business, about editing. And I think it's better to have them in a group setting so folks can see it and learn from it. I'll put those links in later, but I think we really should get started. We're not necessarily held to an hour specifically, but I know you all have things to do. So just to, oh, Paul, you need to let me screen share.
Let me do that right now.
Yeah, while we're waiting for that, just out of curiosity, could y'all kind of let me know who has never used Lightroom before? Show of hands or comment.
You can use the little reaction on the emoji.
Yes, of course.
If you don't want to raise your hand in real life. Functionally. Nice.
To give you background, I was a journalism major in college. So all we learned was this is how you do an unmasked layer and this is how you crop. We were not allowed to play with anything. And I didn't even learn how to use Lightroom until I think my senior year. I was taking graduation photos and my homeboy was like, hey man, you're doing all of those, you're editing each photo one by one. Sheesh. Right. And so that was in 2013. Oh, am I good to share now? Thank you, Polly.
Yes.
And so since then, it's been kind of a road to, I would say Lightroom is what happens when you know, when Camera Raw and Bridge have a baby. So you can organize your images here. And in that organization, you have the opportunity to do a lot of editing and also do it and keep your things organized across your phone. Grab all my props for this. Tablet and desktop. Or this is an iPad, sorry, it just looked like a box. But at the root of it, it's about being in control of your work. So Polly, can you see my screen?
Yes, looks great.
Okay, great. So what we're actually going to start with is just understanding what we're looking at. Over here, in this top left corner, this is our navigation bar for Lightroom. The way it's set up is for you to be able to get in and start editing your photos immediately. But what I actually want y'all to think about is your image organization. You see, I have some albums over here that are 2017. What I'm trying to figure out is why I can't zoom anymore. In the top left corner, you'll see that there's an add photos button. You see you can take this like column away, but the reason that I have landed first on this learn and discover section is I want to spend 3 or 4 minutes on it to show y'all what it does and how it can help you outside of this call learn Lightroom at your pace for the things that you want to know. So on the left side, Adobe realized in 2018, 2019 that folks were spending a lot of time Googling things and then leaving the app, coming back and trying to like half screen share, half watch. So instead they built in 2 things that are really helpful to teach you how to edit. There is learn and discover. Learn are like active tutorials. So let me use one of mine because I don't want to open someone's and not know where it goes. So here's one I did. Let's pick a drastic one. This one of Kayla. So I took this photo of Kayla at Afrotech in 2018, and it was just outside. And basically, the way the tutorials are set up is it says a little bit about the project. It shows you how many people have watched it, how many people like it, if it's good or not. Intermediate level, you can look beginner, intermediate, advanced, and it goes over the core things you learn. So this is important because as we get into the editing in a minute, you're going to see that there's different sections, and I would advise you start in the order of the top and go down so as you start to get more comfortable with the app. So what's kind of cool about this tutorial is it's written like a chapter book, but you can click along. So can you all see how these like little blue circles and prompts are coming up? So basically it shows you what I did, and all of these tutorials are written by folks like me, Toby Shinobi, trying to think of other folks that were in the program. Summer Murdoch. A lot of folks worked with Adobe specifically to make these tutorials so that folks could understand like why we're doing things. So pretty early, I'm saying like cropping early in the editing process helps me remove distractions. So you see that I'm talking about cropping it 5:7, shows you how to crop, and then brings it down, and you continue to work through each step. And then if you want to come back to this later and you're like, what's that little thing you did? In this top right corner, it shows you how many steps are there, 30. So if you click, you can go pretty fast and say, oh, let me get all the way to this curves tutorial because I'm having a hard time understanding how curves works. And so the cool thing is you can always revisit these, you can like them, and you can also follow people on here, which is kind of funny because I don't know if folks necessarily understand how to do that. But these tutorials are great because it shows you, let's say you see a photo or an edit that you think is cool. You can go directly to it and say, how did he do that? Like this picture of my friend Benicia that I did for Uber a couple years ago. It's very orange, very summer. So maybe you're doing a project. Maybe you're doing some lifestyle stuff for a beachwear brand, right? Or a swimsuit. And you want something that gives you that like, and y'all know this, it's that M5 visco look that gives you that very like high, like deep yellow, and there's like kind of washed out highlights. And so if you want to learn how to do it, you can just click through, and I'm saying here, reduce exposure, and you're just doing every step like I would as I've written through here. And it's funny because this hilariously took way much, like this took a really long time to do. So I hope you find these helpful. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put like, you can just copy this tutorial. I'm just going to put it in the chat so y'all can see it. Oh, there's chat. I always forget how all screen shares work. But what happens is you can click directly into that Lightroom and you can go straight to this tutorial. But here I'm just explaining like, hey, I'm trying to bring out my shadows a little bit. So this edit is a little evener, more even. I'm gonna bring my whites down. So I make sure that here, these little white spots in her blouse aren't too blown out. And then, it kind of sets you up to understand what exactly I'm doing so that with each step, you're getting explanation. And I know I'm going kind of fast, but this, if we went step by step, could take like half an hour by itself. But the point with these is that it can help you see specifically what I'm doing and why. There's ones by hundreds of people that are really smart. Shout out to New York being loud in the background. But the goal of these is for you to learn like a textbook. But unlike maybe watching a YouTube tutorial, this is right here with you. The only downside is if you're an auditory learner, it can be difficult because you don't really hear anything. So those are the tutorials. But there's also this thing called Discover that's even, I think, more helpful as y'all are folks that kind of understand the basic premises as how Lightroom works. You have functional understanding, as someone said earlier. So let's go back to my edits, because sometimes when I do these demos, I do other people's edits and then I don't know where it's going to go. But these are really cool because if you just like hover over an image, let me find like a pretty dramatic change. This is a photo that printed in the New York Times for the year, a year of coronavirus in 2021. So if you hover over it, you'll see the before, and if you leave, you'll see the after. So if you go to someone's page, or you see even edits on the Discover page, you can see, oh wow, like this is kind of like a little Lion King look. Maybe you're going on a trip, and I don't know, can y'all see that before and after? Okay, I know sometimes Zoom the resolution can be a little tricky, but basically what I do here is I'm like, man, I haven't taken a cityscape photo in a while. Let me look for one that edits in the way I want to. I can even look up here and say, oh, let me look for an aerial, right? And so they're tagged based on what people write. Let me look at food. I don't photograph food as often. Maybe that's a little dark, so let me go to this photo, right? This is nice because it brings this warmth up. Or wow, look at this photo from Marlena, right? So if you click on this, something pretty cool happens. You just see all the edits. And you can save their edit as a preset. If you hit save as preset, then it'll pop up and it'll give the name of the person. You can save it. I have a bunch of folders of presets. You can save it into a folder that maybe says food or something, and you can keep it moving. Presets are a very helpful way for you to edit. And I promise we get all this soon. I just wanted you to know that like even outside of this or YouTube videos, you can sit on your phone, on the train, you're stuck in a car, you had a family function, you're not paying attention, and you want to be like, oh, let me like take like 10 minutes and watch a couple of these. it's cool because you can like hover over each one. You can go to a certain step and be like, wow, how did the color mix red? How did this alter it? How did adding green change? Like that visual learning that all of you practice as image makers already really works well for you here, because you get the opportunity to just kind of go back over and say, I don't know. You can look at it on your computer, etc. So that is the internal learning tools that are there, and something that I really want you guys to focus on, or excuse me, y'all. I'm trying to ungender my language, and you guys is like so ingrained in what I'm trying to say. But actually, shout out, this is a photo I took of Brandon Jinx yesterday. I don't know if you guys know who Jinx is. He was awesome, super cool dude, but I'm not going to pull it up because that is not ready to be published yet. So let's go to something else. Essentially, this left side of Lightroom is all about your organization, but the right side over here is all about your editing. So real quick, this top right lets you see your storage. I have an abnormal amount of storage. This is normally very expensive. I'm not advocating that anybody spends this much money on storage because I work with Adobe a lot. Sometimes they give me some extra. There is like little tutorials that you can search for in this little question bar. This is your export button. You all know the little box with the arrow in it. Come on, we're all on Twitter. But little cool things that you can even finish an edit and share it to Discover for folks to see if you use something that's popping. Maybe Polly wants to do some later. And then you get these, like, these are notifications, but I don't, come on. So if we go over to the right side, we see this little blue thing that says E for edit. We tap these three little guys, and all of a sudden this really sweet editing bar comes up. If you have it on your phone or your iPad, what's really cool about this version of Lightroom, the cloud-based version, is the edits sync across platforms as long as you have them on a cloud. For the folks that have used Lightroom Classic, just explain really quick. Lightroom Classic is a storage-based, a local storage-based editing software that's very similar, probably 95%, to this version of Lightroom. It uses drives, or if you are one of those people that has a computer with a lot of storage, you can back your things up that way. This version of Lightroom uses cloud-based storage. I think partially so Adobe can make more money, which is no shade, is what it is. People buy storage, but also because we're living in an age where we have an abundance of images, and it can be kind of absurd for people to keep buying this storage when they can have it backed up digitally. So if you choose to use Lightroom Classic, or if you choose to use this version of Lightroom, a lot of things I'm going to be saying are going to be very similar. Before I continue though, does anyone have any questions about the editorial, or excuse me, the tutorial or Discover files that I mentioned? And if you do, feel free to unmute or write in the chat, and then we will kind of get to the nitty gritty of like how these work and like how I think about it. Oh, there's a bunch of chat things. Hold on. Okay, I have a.
Jesse, do you want to unmute and ask your questions?
Yeah, sorry guys, I'm super.
Yeah, because I think you're the only one who had a specific question. Everybody else is like their minds were blown by this.
And it's hard, y'all, because I hate going fast because it's confusing. But then if I go slow,
yeah, no, you're fine. Go ahead.
Whatever.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go from.
Oh, sorry.
Is it Uday? If I'm saying your name correctly, I apologize. Is it only the cloud version of Lightroom that you have access to Discover features? So cloud version of Lightroom, yes, is the only one that you have access to Discover features, but cloud Lightroom is free. You can just download it on your phone, Lightroom Mobile. And if you do that without even connecting to an Adobe account, you can open and look at any Discover files and edits because they figured out that's an excellent lead magnet to get folks to use it more in the future. And yes, I will acknowledge that the Adobe subscription model is difficult and puts a lot of strain on people. I'm not here to pretend like, we have unlimited amounts of money. And I know largely many of you are editorial photographers. And that's a big burden because that's, a portion of the money you're making each month. But,
I may or may not be able to give out some codes soon. So stay tuned, y'all.
Boom. Also, I'm doing a live stream next week with Adobe. I think we're giving a code away each day for a year thing. So I'll tell Polly, and if you just show up when we're doing a giveaway, then we can enter it. And I'm extremely biased to not giving it to white people. So, and that's not bad. I'm not saying anything about white people. I like white people. I just in this terms of this. So the other question I had was Jess or Jessilia said Lightroom Mobile on my phone and my iPad. Just wanted to try to learn it before switching it on my computer. Is the same thing sync wise? If I got Lightroom CC, would it sync? No. So Lightroom CC Classic. Oh, sorry. Yes. If you got Lightroom CC Creative Cloud, it would sync whatever edits you have on your phone and whatever edits you're doing on your iPad all into a little ecosystem. If you look at this little corner right here, you'll see that it says use this little thing into a thing, like an infinity arrow. It means it's syncing between Lightroom OS here and web, and then also it'll let you know how backed up you are. So I'm gonna actually start with this photo of my friend Melanie I took a couple years ago with the iPhone that I really like. I really love this woman's freckles. It's a pretty simple photo, and also I know it's not really edited that much. And I'm just gonna run through this. Oh, I thought somebody called me the ops. I was like, what? How am I ops? What are you talking about? All right, so let's go to, I'm just gonna reset this photo edit so y'all can see it. So this is the flat version of the photo. I took it on an iPhone 11, I think. I wanna say, I can find out right now by going down to information in this bottom right corner. And it was taken with an iPhone 12, my apologies. So I took this, and because it was the phone, you can see where it was taken. And so we're just gonna do a quick gamut of these, everything on this right side. So this first is edit. So it's like how you change your exposure, you know. And the cool thing about Lightroom is all the edits are non-destructive. So anything you change, you can always go back to. On next, there's crop, which allows you to not only crop, but you can change the aspect ratio. So for Instagram stories, you know, you want to be 9:16, right? For Instagram, you know, you want to be 2:1. There's different crops that you have for different things on social. Shout out to this trying to tell me what to do. Go away. You also get this pretty sweet thing called a healing brush. And the reason why I wanted to use this photo is we're going to pretend that that I don't like my girl's freckles for some reason. And the healing brush allows you to just take them out and sample pixels that are around it. So like we're not advocating to do this, but just so you can see how to do it. And we're going to go into more of this in the future, but just trying to show this to you. This is a masking tool, which is actually kind of complex. We'll end with that today. And then down at the bottom, we have comments. So if you have a Lightroom Cloud subscription and you can share these files out. So let's say Paula is your editor. You took some photos of the Black Women Photograph event and you send them to her. She can edit them. She can comment. She can like them. I kind of like it because if I have a client, I can share the album with them via Lightroom and they can like the photos in there versus me exporting all the images to Dropbox and taking notes about what they like and go back into Lightroom. It's too much. Then this is tagging. I don't really tag my photos much, but it knows the people that are in it because it's wild. And then lastly, there's info, which includes title, caption, copyright, when it was taken, where, and then more importantly, the metadata. So if anyone, you know, gets nosy and asks you like, what shutter speed was that? It's really easy for you to find it over here. So with that in mind, let's get in a little bit of editing. So first and foremost, top, we're going to go straight to light. We can pop back up to these in a minute. Exposure changes every pixel. It makes every pixel brighter or every pixel darker. And there's really an occasion, in my opinion, you want to use exposure this way because it's kind of like a hammer. It will drive the nail in, but often I'm not sure that's necessarily what you need to do. For this image, for example, I love this light you're getting at sunset through this curtain. And so I know that this is a brighter part of the image, which would fall into the highlight. So instead of saying, man, I want to see how much darker that looks and understanding it's going to impact everyone's skin, I want to then just bring my highlights down a little bit and see what happens. I still don't really love this, so I'll actually bring them up, bring my shadows down. You're starting to see little changes. So for example, I know my shadows are my darkest part of the image. look how I'm losing detail in my girl's hair over here. So you see how like I'm losing even the strands, but if I come up, I'm gaining the strands. So instead of using exposure, I instead am a big fan of figuring out what exactly is it that I'm trying to edit? Am I trying to alter my highlights, or am I trying to alter my shadows? The whites and darks, the whites and blacks, I don't use as much. They essentially remove what the white point is, which is the absolute brightest part of the image, and the black point, the absolute darkest. What that means for the folks, no one ever understands how this works. So if you already know this, congratulations. But this is the this is the oh shit, this is the curve. And this top right corner is the white point. This top bottom right corner or bottom left corner is the black point. So just for an example, talking about white and black point also, if I bring my black point up, you see how the image starts to get grayer. Now all of a sudden, what is the darkest part of the image is now defined as this kind of gray spot versus here when you're getting that contrast. And one of the things you need for contrast is extreme bright, extreme dark, and then everything in the middle. If I move the white point, you notice how all of a sudden it's getting darker by making my white point less and less. Or if I move it this way, how much brighter it's getting, because I'm saying, oh no, I want this white point to be super overblown. I don't want that, so I'm gonna bring this, oh geez. I'm gonna bring this back. But just to show you as an example, like what moving the black and white point means. So for example, if I move my black point up, you see how all of a sudden, very similarly when we slid on the curve, now you're like, there's less definition because the darkest parts of the image are now kind of shot out. I move my black point to be brighter, which was the equivalent of moving it this way. And I start moving it this way, you're seeing how all of a sudden the darkest part of the image continues to get worse and worse, and you're losing detail. So I think most of your work is going to be done in exposure. What's up, Jabari?
Quick question about the whole highlights versus shadows. Now, what if you really just wanted like the curtains highlights to come down, but you didn't want it to affect the face highlights at all? Like, what would you do? Because I've been there so many times.
Oh, I'm about to take you there right now, my girl. We're going to jump ahead a little bit. My girl's in the car working. I respect that. I hope your car's not running. Please don't idle. It's bad for the environment. All right, we're going to go down to masking, which is right here. Masking is pretty rad because they have really revamped this from Adobe Max this last year to allow you to, in one button, select your subject. Just wait a second. And now it just selects the subjects. Yo, right? I see you. Hold on. My girl, Erica, I see Erica was like, yo, word? Right? That's what I said too. And so now what that means is if y'all have worked in Photoshop, you've seen a layer mask before. Basically what this means, so we're going to go over this before, but just a quick little thing about layer masks. Okay. Imagine you are, without talking about darkroom stuff, that's exclusionary. Okay. Here's a piece of paper from my shoot yesterday, right? I want to make I want to see light just on just on my eyes, not bottom half of my face. So I would cover this part of my face. A layer mask essentially allows you to change what's being edited. So here, this is so small and I'm so angry about it because I really wish I could zoom in. Hold on one second. Let me stop screen sharing for a second and let me see if I can add zoom in, because if not, you're not going to see what I'm talking about. Okay, weird. It's not working for some reason. All right, we're just gonna have to try to see it. Okay, so layer mask is on. If y'all look at this little part that says masks, you'll see that there is a rudimentary drawing, like a pixel map of the image up here, and you'll see that where their faces are, it's all white. Within the background, that curtain that Jabari was asking for is all black. That's because now we've only selected them, and you can also see it based on how red they are. This is just to show you. So now if I wanted to edit just their faces, I can brighten just their faces, and you see how, like, just to show you, for example, what it's doing. But now I know that I didn't want to do that. Instead, I want to make an edit to the entire image, not just that. So I'm going to just hit these little three dots and hit invert subject selection. And now you'll see that the background is selected, not the subjects. And I'll do that again because I know everyone was just like, yo, what just happened? All right, so remember we went to the masking tool, it's over here. We tapped it, it's this like little like net looking thing. We went create a new mask and we chose select subject. Now, since the options for the smart masking is subject or sky, there's no sky. So to make sure I get the curtains, I went ahead and hit select subject. So I hit create new mask, select subject, and then I inverted it. So I went, okay, you just selected me, but I want to edit everything in my background. So like, let's say I wanted to take the orange out of these shoes that are right here. Now that I've inverted it, you'll see what I mentioned to you before, where their heads are is black, but the background is white. So now let's bring these highlights down or up. And you'll see something kind of subtle happen. So you see how this darkens a little bit or brightens a little bit? Even bring our shadows down a little bit. Or bring our exposures down. Bring our contrast up. Like, this is how you do it. This isn't the best example of like what this should look like naturally, but what I would do is I'd select subject and then I would inverse. Also, sometimes, especially for Black people, Black and brown folks, hair is not this straight. So of course, this algorithm is going to act funny. So let me show you an example that is not this. 1 second. If you have any questions, Paul, if you see any questions, you mentioned to me while I'm pulling this up.
Yes, I have one from our Slack, but that will come later. I see Regina already answered that question. It's more so commentary. You guys are so funny. Of just people realizing that, yeah, I did not know all these things. So thank you.
Yeah, and I know we're going.
No, this is great. And don't worry, y'all, it's being recorded as well. So but please feel free to drop any questions in the chat as we continue.
Sorry. This is a photo I took for Headspace, my friend Greg, walking around Bed-Stuy, just, about like everyday joy how people are feeling. So I'm going to show you one new thing, and then we're going to go back to the thing we're talking about. There's something really cool in Lightroom called versions. I have a video that I made about it for Lightroom that I will find and put it in this chat. But essentially what it allows you to do is make multiple edits at once. So for example, I'm just going to use the most basic thought I can think of. You take an amazing photo of yourself. You look awesome and you're trying to post it. It's just like a fit pic. You know that if you want to post the stories, it might be 9:16, or you know that maybe on your Twitter, you only post black and white photos. So instead of having to edit and export and edit and export and edit and export, you can make all these edits in one spot. So there's this thing here called versions. One cool thing about versions is there's an auto feature. So this is the before photo, this is the after. Versions knows that if I like open it on my phone to make a change, open it on the iPad to make a change, to make it here, it'll automatically save different versions based on where you opened it. But since I've only edited it here, I only have what I have and then the original. So let me save this version and call it BWP example edit. Now I'm going to go back to the original. It's flat. I'm going to talk you through how I'll edit it. And this is a kind of a good way for us to understand a little bit more about Lightroom, and then I can show you how I can make multiple versions. So first, I actually like the detail. I can see good detail in Greg's hair already. A lot of times I use a shadow slider if I see, like, for example, if I know that he has some gray hair, if I can't see detail in his hair, then I'm going to use shadows to bring it up to start to see some more of his hair, because it's altering just the darkest parts of the image and it's a little bit more subtle of an edit instead of using the hammer of exposure. I'm sure all of y'all have had your photos taken and been like, wow, I see no texture in my hair. I just see like black. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna actually bring my exposure up a touch, a skosh, as my friend Ray would say. Then I'm gonna bring my contrast up a little bit. I personally don't do contrast in the beginning as early, but I like this because there's all these light parts of the image in the back, and then him, plus it's an overcast day. You can see some nice sun back on the back of his little burst fade. So I'm gonna leave white alone, but I'm gonna bring my black up a little bit, just make sure you get more detail in his black jacket. Then that is exposure. Over in color, there's a lot going on here, but essentially all of you know what white balance is. Or if you don't, white balance is that each light you have gives off different color temperatures, and your camera has to read something as white, because if it doesn't, weird things are going to happen. So for example, just keep your face, I'm going to unshare my screen so you can see this, but look at my face, right? You can see that around me there is white in the background. I'm in a shoe closet essentially, and I have a light on, right? So if I start moving the color temperature of the light this way, you see how it gets a little bluer? It's kind of subtle. Let me go the other direction. This is what happens if I make it way too hot. See how my skin starts to look weird? Let me bring it up so you can see. See how much more orange my skin looks? This is not what my skin looks like. The color slider in Lightroom is important because the first thing you can do in there is alter your color temperature and your tint to offset for anything maybe your camera misread incorrectly, or I'm sure all of you had a situation where you set your white balance as one thing and then you took a photo later, didn't realize, and the whole photo looks purple. You're like, what happened? What's happening is the camera is saying, we thought that this color temperature at 5500 is white, but it's not. So once again, this is at blue. Like you see how like it just looks weird. The light I'm using is a smart light, so it's not letting me like be as aggro as I want to be, but this is closer to white. This is too blue. You see that how different that looks? I know it's not, it's subtle, but it'd be like if you put on the wrong foundation and they're like, what's wrong with you? It's a similar thought. Used to wear makeup in high school for theater and I hated it. So with this photo, Greg, we know that he's outside. I actually think the temperature looks nice. Let's say I want it to look a little warmer. I can start to increase my color temperature. And you see how now it's adding a general warmth to it. And then let's say that I think adding a little pink looks nice. I personally think this looks good, but especially for your editorial jobs, just make sure you hit this little eyedropper tool, you select what's supposed to be white, and then it'll just go back to what the accurate white balance is. If somehow you have mixed light, which means you have like, if you're like photographing in a school, for example, and there's one light bulb that's green, one light bulb that's yellow, figure out which one you want to set as white, whichever more the image is lit as, and then we can try to work backward from that. Vibrance is kind of like highlights and shadows. It's better than saturation, in my opinion. Saturation, if you desaturate, it means to make it black and white. And if you put saturation at 100, you're going, man, out here looking crazy. I'm sure we all remember that first time we started playing and we put saturation, we're like, oh, this is hot. No. Vibrance is cool because it natively senses what the more muted colors in the image are, and it focuses on saturating those. So even if like, let's put saturation at 59. Look how bad his skin looks, how orange and like leathery, right? Because we're trying to push color too much. We're saturating all of the pixels. Vibrance instead is pretty rad because let's go to 60, let's go to 59 on Vibrance. His skin still looks good. In fact, if you notice a change, it's more of these blues in the background that are coming out and more of this brick. It kind of figures out what's going on and gives you that punch you want without it being overpowering. And also, just never, you should never have anything this high, please, for the love of God. Let's keep it like 20 or under. So now, like if we want to look at the edit we had before, if we go back to our original version, let's go to original. We're getting a little color, you know, it feels a little pink, a little warm. It's a viable edit, but we're not done. So we're going to close versions. We're going to go down to one of my absolute favorite tools that we're going to touch on in a minute more, but the color mix tool. So for example, this tool is amazing because it allows you to control specific colors. So we're going to go over the blues just to show you. Each color, so it has, excuse me, red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, purple, and magenta. So each of these colors, each of these colors has 3 sliders: hue, saturation, and luminance. Hue is kind of, you think of a color wheel, right? It's just moving closer or further away. So blue is between cyan and purple, If I slide it to the right, it's going to get more purple. Slide it to the left, it's going to get more cyan. If you just think about how colors mix, saturation is how saturated is that color. And then luminance is how bright is that color. That one's kind of hard for folks to understand. But for example, if you look at these, you'll see this blue is actually pretty bright. So let's say we slide our hue to the right. You see how this is starting to change to purple. All the blues are going purple, or they're getting more cyan. So you see them getting like a little greener. This is back to the original. Saturation shows me how deep do I want to get this color, or I can make that color completely. See how much different the edit looks with that gone. I know that this isn't necessarily practical because you're like, why would I use it this way? But I'll show you in a minute. And then lastly, the luminance, I actually use a ton because it's how bright is that color. So look at this difference. You're not losing any of that intensity of the color, you're just making it brighter, or in this case, darker, right? It could be a little handy tool if you have a really distracting piece. You can make a mask and you can desaturate like a stop sign. Or if there's something really distracting that's a really bright color and you're having a hard time removing it from the image, this is a good way to do it naturally without it like looking like you're pulling something crazy out. So that is color mix, just like really rudimentary. This is color grading, which actually is an easier tool to use. It is built to resemble how you color grade for films. You essentially have 3 circles. So the reason why I've been harping on highlights and shadows is that way you can better understand how you want to use it here. So essentially what can happen is highlights, once again, are like the brightest parts of the image, like the back of Greg's head, these windows. The shadows are like his hair, his jacket, and the midtones are like everything else. So if you look back at me right now, you'll see that the white on the wall would be the highlights. My hair would be the shadows. And then everything else is in that kind of in that myriad period that would be midtones. So, you know, folks are always like, how do I get my thing like a little cast of color, you know? What you do is you just pick a color. Let's just go to midtones, make it dramatic. So we want to make it more orange, a little warmer. We want to make it cooler with a little blue. Or we want to, you know, you can kind of move around and pick a color. And the cool thing is now you can be like, okay, like this color is a little aggressive. I like the tint of it, but I can just slide it closer to the center. So I know none of you are trying to get a geometry lesson, but remember, this is I believe the center of the image. And then if you just kind of draw, if you have like a protractor, you draw to the edge, the further you get away from the center, the more saturated the color becomes. So, I mean, this is ridiculous. No one would ever do this edit, but you know, you can say to yourself, I like, look how we just added a little bit of yellow and how this has gone from so flat to having like a little bit of warmth and life, but it doesn't look overpowering. Now, if I'm like, oh, well, you know, like I want to see a little stronger, I can keep sliding up and you'll see how it's getting a little bit more intense. Now, I personally don't love that, so I can hit Command Z, go back to where I was. Also, one kind of cool thing you can do is you can also just take from the side you're on, grab that edge color and just slide all the way around to see like, oh, I like this intensity of color. Let me see what it looks like for these other hues. Don't love it. We'll go back to where I was. Now, the next thing I can do is, all right, like I like my base, but like, I don't know, I kind of want to give it like a little bit of like interesting color. So let me change my shadows. So now I just added a little bit of purple to the shadows. I'm trying to going a little faster to like, not necessarily saying why I picked the color, but this feels a little more vintage. Greg's like a little bit of an older dude. So I like actually really enjoy giving him a little bit of this look. So one thing I haven't mentioned is you see these little eyeballs that are popping up all over the place. These let you like turn off and edit and turn it back on, just so you can see what we changed. We can even change, oh, how does this look with our midtone greens? And how does this look with our shadow purples, right? And this can be a fun way for you to kind of pop in and be like, oh, like I tried that. Like, how does it look? It's non-destructive, so you can work through things. So this is an edit that I like. Lastly, or not lastly, but to cover a couple more things, instead of sharpening, so like I know we're all used to this, like let's zoom in on Greg, let's sharpen to oblivion. You see how now as we're sharpening every pixel, so we're kind of overstaining the wrinkles on his face. It makes his hair look kind of cool, but we've all seen those like baked images. I don't know if anyone watched basketball, but if you go to Kawhi Leonard's Instagram, the last photo he posted is a picture of him and Obama. And I'm like, how did this happen? Who put a high pass filter on this photo? It is awful. I would not use sharpening like this. I think around 40 is good. What you can do instead is a couple things. There's texture. Texture adds texture to each of your each of your pixels, but it's a kind of, I see it as like a softer version of sharpening. I also like clarity, but I don't like using clarity a ton because you see how it can give you that really baked image. It can help you sometimes when you're photographing a landscape, but if I'm doing faces, texture is where I want to be. Dehaze is interesting. I wouldn't know how to explain it to you necessarily, but it's almost like an inverse of contrast. And then vignette I almost never use, because it just adds a vignette to the image, and this isn't 1938. Last thing I want to show you, and then we're going to kind of go back to versions, is there's this thing called geometry that's just awesome. And essentially how it works is a lot of times this happens often. If you look at this photo, it looks like it's straight, and the very center of it is. But because I'm in this building at a low angle with a wider lens, you see it feels like it's bending. So like if I wanted to, which I'm not necessarily sure I do here, I can alter the image to make it seem like I photographed it higher up, or more importantly, just so it seems straight. So you can immediately go and hit upright and hit auto, and it'll just try to straighten the image as best it can. And auto will help you, and generally that'll do everything you want to. Sometimes, here's a photo I took for Amex with Noemi and Karsten. You should follow them. They're excellent photographers. Okay, let me turn this off. Where's the not straight one? Okay, so this is kind of a weird photo because we straightened it already, but like you'll see that there's a lot of lines. There's this window, there's this line, there's just a lot going on. So how do you straighten something where there's too many things going on at once? You can go to guided. What guided does is you can hit this little guy right here. Oh yeah, I already did it. Oh, damn it. I gotta delete these and do it again. This is the original image. See how it's just a little off? If you tap this for guided, you can tell Lightroom, hey, this is my x-axis. Shout out to the geometry folks in here. And this is my y-axis. And it'll move it for you, which is crazy, right? And this is only a specific case where, like I said, there's a lot going on in this room. But that's how you do that. And it's fun to play with. I would tell you almost always stay with auto, but guided can be helpful if you are having a hard time with auto and you want to make sure that you take your edit into your own hands. So that is a lot of things I just showed you, but now I'm going to show you why I talked about version in the first place. Here's our edit of Greg. We're going to go back to versions. We'll see that we have the edit we started with. We have the original. Now we have this one. So let's name this example edit 2. So now I can export this image, this one, and this one. Let's say like I got a burner Instagram, and then I have my actual one, and I want to export both, see how they look. I know that if I want it for Twitter, I want to go and hit the crop button. I want to go to 2x1, and then this can fit as someone's header photo. So I can go back to versions, say this is Twitter. Then I can say, hey, Twitter's not that poppin'. Let me get this ready for my Instagram story. So this is already in, it's horizontal, and Instagram story is going to be vertical. So I need to put in 9x16 instead of 16x9. And I can have something that this fits. Oh, my bad. Oh, okay, never mind. You have to rotate it before you make that edit, but still makes sense. You just get it ready for whatever you need to export it for. I can make another version that's just Instagram story. And then lastly, and if any of you are social media managers and or Polly, who does every job ever, this is super helpful for you. Let's say I want a black and white edit because I'm using this photo to promote an 80s rollerblading night. So now you might think, oh, well, what are you going to do? I can just go back to crop, and it's non-destructive. I can go from aspect ratio 16:9 to original. Goes back to the exact crop it was at. I can go up to Adobe Color, put it in monochrome, export it, And then now in my versions, I have every single edit I needed, and it's all in one place here and easier to find. I said so many things. So I'm going to stop and read all these chats all at once. The emojis in here are slaying me.
There was a question from Regina. If you want to unmute, because I know there's been a lot of chats.
Oh, I see it.
Oh, you do? Okay, great.
So virtual copies. So what Regina's asking for the folks that use Lightroom, Classic, you just make a copy of the image and they can be next to each other, or you can stack them. This just essentially flattens all of them into one area that you can open when you're ready. It's the same concept. You can make different edits. They're non-destructive, and when you export it, it exports it full resolution. Any other questions before I bring us back into this world that I'm not sure any of you really wanted to be in?
No question is too small. There's another question about, oh, what was the dropper icon do with the white balance again?
Okay, so the dropper icon, let me also go back to this edit because we just got really out here. Okay, let me find an example that makes sense. That's not. Okay, this is a photo I took for, oh, this is better. Okay, this is a photo I took for Business Improvement District in Brooklyn a couple years ago. It was just about small businesses. So this is the original, this is the edit I have, this is the original. So let's just make this BWP example edit. Let's go back to the original. Let's say that I didn't have my white balance right, so the photo came out like this. Because it read, I had the white balance incorrect. And so what I would do is I'd go to this eyedropper and say, this is white. And then it would fix it for me. What I was saying that could be difficult though is if somehow this place has outdoor lighting and there's also some more indoor lighting. So you might see that like this happened on some of your photos where like a part of the image is the wrong color. And you're like, what? That's because the light source is different. So I know exactly what this is. Give me 1 second. So what I did. Oh, there it is. Okay, so like for example, I took a picture of my friend Brooke at a carnival, and carnival light, as we all know, is carnival light. So this is a picture of her eating some cotton candy. Let's wait a second for it to load. You'll see that in the background, you can see not only like yellow light, but there's little spots where like the light looks blue, and that's because the color temperature of light is different. This is fine because this is all background, but sometimes if this is here, y'all have all been in places before where like this might be yellow and this might be green. Just try your best to avoid those because those are really, really frustrating for you to edit after the fact. So I'm just gonna make a quick version. Okay, let's go to the original. So you'll see that I exposed for this, but you notice that like if you look at this stuff in the background, it looks bluer. If I start to change my edit, you see how like this blue light's starting to get whiter. It's because I'm moving to the color temperature that light was. But if I go this way, see how some of these, the ones that are more yellow, start to look more white. That's really all it is. But I'm not trying to white balance for these. I'm trying to white balance for this thing that's important. I'm not trying to have my girl look mad sickly. So let's use this eyedropper tool, make this white, and now we're in better shape. Then I can maybe up my contrast, bring my exposure down a little bit. You see how it just looks a little pink still? Now I can still make changes on tint and make it exactly what I think it needs to be, but the eyedropper tool is a good first step for you. Cool? Okay, we keep going. So other things to pay attention to that are important. You finish your job, you want to come back to it later, like I just did. I'm trying to pull some images. Like I pull this photo a lot because people think it's playful and use it for stuff. But as you saw when I was looking through this organization, that there are, 1,000 photos in here. So it's like, how do I find it? So first, I can search by rating up here. So like, is it starred once, twice, or three times? What I do is, after I finish photographing, I will make selects and say, oh, like I'm going to go through every photo and pick the ones that I like. I find this helpful because I often have to go back to images. As photographers, y'all know that a way that you can make a little bit more money is by licensing your photos. I don't mean necessarily with like Adobe stock or anything, but sometimes brands or things don't want to pay for a whole shoot, but they might say, hey, we have $2,000. We need photos of like Black women in the park, and you might have some and they might work. So sometimes I have to look for stuff. And so I know where it is in a folder, but then looking for it can be tedious. So I always go through and rank stuff. So we go to like rank 1, you'll see that it goes from 1,000 photos down to 300. Rank 2, it goes down to 297. Rank 3 is only 3 photos. So that's helpful. Also, you can flag stuff. I don't really do that as often, but it's a similar concept. What I like to do is I'll search for, is the photo edited or not? That's how I know if it's like ready to go. So I can go up here and say, is it edited? Yes or no? No, I can look for unedited photos I know I haven't used, haven't touched. Yes, I can look through other things. And then there's type, where it'll tell you if the image is raw, or you can search for videos. One thing that's super helpful is if we go back to this, and this is always weird because I accidentally imported a bunch of memes, so if something crazy pops up, please don't judge me. You can go and search camera, and you can search anything you've taken a photo of, which is really good. So like, let me say I know, for example, that when I did this project a couple of years ago, I photographed it with this Hasselblad, and I know that. So then I go search for the Hasselblad and look through that. This is just a good way for you to be able to look through stuff. And then sync status lets you know if the images are backed up or not. But organizing your photos, like I mentioned before, is super helpful. You'll see the stuff I have in 2017 and 2018 are all just like named things, which isn't super helpful. Versus if we go to my 2021 folder, you'll see everything is month, day, year, client. So that, as I work through things like, okay, I'm looking for this Logitech job, and I work with Logitech a lot. So it'll be month, day, year, client _ project. Shout out to Makeda. You guys should follow Makeda. She's a goat. Or like New York Times. Like, it's just easier to find things this way. For me, figuring out whatever system works for you is ideal, but just make sure you can find an image in less than 5 minutes. If it takes you a long time to find an image, then you need to reset how you're organizing things. And that's what I meant when I said that Lightroom is a mix between Bridge and Camera Raw. Okay, so now let's do the thing that I wanted to show y'all earlier. Let's go to editing. Hold on. Yeah, we'll use this photo of Mike. Okay, so this is a photo I took of my friend Michael. It is already edited because I took a photo I took years and years ago, but this is a good example of like highlights and shadows. So if we take this photo and you see how as I move this, what's happening just to the shaving cream on his face. I used to work at Bevel, and I don't just take pictures of people with shaving cream on their face. And you'll see how it's impacting the image. But for example, let's say we think the whole image is too dark, we bring our shadows up, just like we talked about, right? Now, what I really want to show y'all, let's go to this picture of Chinwei. This is Chinwei at sunset. It was for the Line Hotel in LA. If we go to versions, we'll see the original, see the final. So once again, we'll call this BWP example. So I don't forget that I made this edit earlier. We'll go to original. And let's put it through our normal paces, right? Let's darken it up. Let's give it some contrast. We're trying to give it some punch. Bring our highlights down because I want to be able to see her top. I actually want to bring my shadows down because I know that her hair is a little darker than this. I brightened it a little when I was photographing it. Now we look at this photo and I'm like, yo, she looks red, right? What am I going to do about that? The three main colors of skin tone that you'll see that you can edit in Lightroom are red, orange, and yellow. And if you go over to Color Mixer, you can play with those. So if I think her skin looks too red, remember we talked about hue. first we can just start to shift the hue a little bit, where if you slide even a little bit, you'll see it gets a little bit more yellow, which looks much more natural. Because if we go the other direction, we got my girl looking wild out here. Not ideal, right? And I know this happens sometimes to all of us. We get a photo taken, and because of what's around us, our skin will reflect that light in a way, and it's not necessarily good. So I am actually a huge fan of using color mix because it's a good way to alter your edit. But you got to be careful, because if you like, let's say we think the red's too bright, we desaturate it. Look what happens to my girl's lips. You then start taking life out of people's faces. So you want to be really careful that you're subtle with this. And as always, when you're making edits in Lightroom, if you're using a slider, if you just double tap the circle, it'll go back to 0. So I liked what we did. We made it just a little bit less red. Let's make it a little more saturated, so it still looks like her. And then let's actually brighten it up with luminance. So if you look at like what happens if you move up and down, let's bring our luminance up a little bit. So now let's once again hit that little eye, our before and our after. It's not a big deal, but it's a little subtle. It is still bright like the sunset. It still looks like her, but it's a little bit better for her skin tone in terms of what she looks like. I mean, I went to middle school with the girl. I've known her most of my life, so I know what she looks like. And I think this is just ends up being a better edit. The question that my girl who's in the car that I forgot about already was she was asking about the curtain. So let's show another example. So like, let's say here, I know that instead, like, let's say I've tried shadows and highlights, I feel like I'm just not getting it right. If I go back to masking, I can just do a brush, right? I can just start to paint. Oh, geez. I can just start to paint directly onto her hair. Maybe I know that the part that's in the light is too bright, so I can paint directly onto her hair. And red just lets me know that it's being painted on. It's not altering anything. I can then say, all right, let me just darken this spot or brighten this spot, right? And what's nice is, like we mentioned with the mask, what's in white is what's being edited. What's in black is what's being left alone. So that's a control that you have. And I'm going to show it to you a little bit easier in Photoshop so you can see it. But let's take this image. Let's delete this horrible edit I just made to it. Let me pick this photo of Kurt, because that'll be a good example. Let's wait for my man's skin to get together. Okay, Kurt is amazing at it's not Cosmic Insane, he changed his ad. I will find it and give it to you. Let's say Kurt was just having a little skin stuff going on today. How do I make good edits to his skin without doing anything wild? Let's go back to this little band-aid. And I also know we're going to do a second session of this, because I know I'm just like, and then, jump into something else. I'm not sure if this is it's a good introduction, but it's, we can't get it all in an hour. There are two options for the brush. There's a healing brush and the cloning brush. The healing brush is the best one for skin, because of what it does is, Kurt is this little blackhead right here. And this is, I'm not like trying to talk anything. My face is crazy. But let's tap this. And what happens is you pick the point you want to change. And then this little arrow lets you know that it is now sourcing from a different point. The way that heal works is it will look for pixels similar to the one that you're selecting and then copy the things over. So now I'm just going to pick a couple spots. I don't like that it picked over here, so I can always just move and say, no, why don't you get it from over here? And the thing that's cool about the heal brush is it'll make an edit, and what it's really looking for is pixels that are similar brightness of that. So it'd be like if I had like a pimple right here, I shouldn't source something from over here because it's in shadow. I should source something from another part of my face that's similar to that one. So I'm just going to kind of pick through some ones. And then after I keep doing this, y'all will see how dramatically different it is. You can always make the size of the selected area bigger, but I found that something that's that large, it just gets, the less localized it is, the less accurate it is. So I'm just going to pick a couple of these. Polly, if there's any questions, let me know. I'm just going to take like 30 seconds to do this so we can see this as an example. I'll hold the space bar just to pull up while I go. I'm just going to pick a couple spots real quick. Okay, so now let's go away from this. Let's pull back. His face looks a little smoother. I'm not going to do every single one of these, but let's go back and let's see. Oh, sorry. I have to pick a zoom that's like close enough. Okay. This is face after. This is fit. Oh, it's gonna go step by step. Huh. Okay. Hold on. Let's do it this way. This is his face before. This is his face after. Look at how many things just are gone, but they look fine. I wouldn't make a habit of doing a ton of this. I think it's bad to, I think we have responsibilities as image makers, both in how we talk about ourselves and our skin and how we do it for others. If you took my photo and then I got it back and I was airbrushed to hell, I'd feel really crappy about myself. But my rule is like, is it distracting from the image? So for example, this is a photo I've edited a lot. Just photo of here. So you can see this is why everything needs to be labeled, not some things. All right, I'm just gonna use Adobe Sensei instead, which is their kind of cool search feature. I can type in here, I can just write flag, and it'll find some photos of me, of people with flags. Okay, this is what I was looking for. So this is an image I took for a project called Nation of Newcomers, and my girl was just having a bad skin day, and so I took these two out, or these three out, because I thought it was distracting from the image. It's just like, you're going to see it and you're going to first think acne instead of thinking that this person's talking about how they came to America. And that for me is an example of a time that it's acceptable to move. So I'll show you what I mean. Yeah, see? It's just not worth it, you know? It's just, you know, nobody needs to feel like they're out here looking crazy. And with those, I use the heel brush, or the heel brush. If you use the clone brush, the best time I'd use it is if there's like trash in the street or something you're trying to pull up, but anything with a face, you just want to make sure that you're using that. I'm going to take a quick second, stop, because I know that this has to be super overwhelming for people, and answer some questions for 5 minutes, and then show you like 2 more things, and then I'm just going to like let y'all go because I know we're over time and I'm just like word vomiting on you. But I just want everyone to know how to do things. So, you know, it's what it is.
No, this is amazing. There's 2 questions from our Slack and then one more follow-up in the chat as well. Let me see, where did I put it? Can you see it?
Did you chat it?
Where did I, so is what are the best Lightroom and Adobe Expert settings for photos to be shared on social, web and social? What is the best way to go about color matching so that a photo edited with Adobe looks the same after exporting without extensive color calibration of the device? And then a follow-up to that, do we need to or can we set up color profiles like in Photoshop?
Oh, that's a good question. So let me share again. I added this in there, but if y'all have, yep, look at polylink and stuff. If you have questions after the fact, I added my Discord in there. Do not spend more time in there than you do the Black Women Photograph Slack, but the Discord can be helpful because there's a lot of conversations happening constantly, and there's giveaways for things that I get from brands and forget that I have and then try to mail to people. So, you know, pop in there if you can. and happy to answer questions there. Also, I have a YouTube that has a ton of videos, and I'm actually relaunching that to have a video a week starting April 15th, and a Patreon and all these fun things. So please keep following me on the internet. So the question about export, let's go back to share. Okay, so we're back on some photos we've seen. We'll do this. Here's some photos I took of Chromo a couple years ago. Male with the smooth hair. And by that I mean he's bald. This is the photo we ended up using for the export. I mean, for like the main part of the magazine. So we hit this share button and you can go to JPEG small, JPEG large, original plus settings. But if you go to custom settings, you can choose if you want to export it as DNG, a JPEG, a TIFF. And then it's going to export, I believe, in RGB, because that's what's good for the web. But if for some reason you need it elsewhere, if you just right click on the image, and this is the thing we were supposed to do for the last part of this, you can go to edit in Photoshop, and then the stuff you have for color profiles, you can just export there. Basically what you want to do is you just want to export it at 72 DPI. Oh, yes, that is like a raw format. Yes, you can export as DNG. You can export it also as the raw plus the data. So you can just export it and have the person, when they open it in Camera Raw or in Lightroom, it'll pop up and say, this is, where'd you go? Okay. It'll pop up if you do original plus settings with the full file plus the edits, and they can export it as they see fit. If you have a client that's not editorial, do not do that because you don't want people having raws for no reason. Oh yeah. After we do this, I'm just gonna go through some rules that I think y'all should remember. So now if we have it in Photoshop, I want to show y'all what I was talking about with layer mask a little more. So let's make a copy of this layer. If you haven't used Photoshop before, essentially think of it like this. You're making a sandwich, and the thing on the top layer is the thing you see the most, but everything goes together for when you bite the sandwich for you to taste it. So what that means is this photo, let's say I don't love how oh no, I don't love how maybe dark the side of his face is. So what I want to do is I want to make a layer mask, which is this little button over here, add layer mask. If you never know what something is, just if you leave your mouse over it long enough, it'll hover. And now I have this like white piece of paper, kind of like when I was covering my face, pop up to the right of this image. And like I said, what's white, you're going to edit, and what's black isn't being edited. So if we hit B for brush, and over here we see that our brush, we have a white and a black underneath. So let's hit X, flip to black being our foreground color, make our brush much bigger with brackets. And then let's start going over his face. And you're seeing that it doesn't seem like anything's happening. But if you look over on the right where this layer mask is, oh, it's not. See, I can't zoom in on the thing I'm showing. I can only zoom in on the screen, which is really irritating. I will figure that out, and next time we talk, I'll have that ready to go. But if you keep brushing, oops, sorry, didn't have any layers selected. On this layer mask, I'm just making it so I'm not altering his face. So now, if I add an adjustment layer, make it a curve just for example's sake, and start to bring it up or down, you notice that that part of his face isn't changing. It's still that same bright area. It's the same concept. Like you're essentially trying. Oh yeah, you want to do bracket keys. Sorry. So Giselia, like the funny part is that I wasn't a bracket keys person for a while until I realized how much faster made my workflow. And it just depends on what you feel comfortable with, but you can make brushes bigger or smaller with brackets. And generally the nice thing with Adobe is with each thing that you have worked on in the past, all of the apps kind of work together. The bracket keys make the brush big or small in Lightroom also. But Photoshop, I don't use every moment of every day anymore. I use it for specific edits. So what I mean is you can hit don't save. If you make an edit in Lightroom or in Photoshop and you re-export to Lightroom, it'll pop up right there. So let's use Kurt's face again because we love him very much. Wait a second for it to download. It's a cloud PSD file, which is pretty cool. Okay, so here's a photo of Kurt. Kurt's great. We love Kurt. I have a Logitech mouse that's pretty rad. That there's like extra buttons. So this button that lets me like make my brush bigger just by looking just by scrolling this side scroll. I'm gonna make a duplicate of this layer. And I'm going to show you how I would edit his face like this was a headshot. So I don't know if y'all have dodged and burned before, but essentially what that does is it allows you to make certain parts of the image brighter or darker. Yeah, so Kana, I use Photoshop like very sparingly. I'm going to show you exactly why. What I'm about to do, you can do in Lightroom easily, but I'm going to show you when I would use Photoshop. So right now I'm going to take this brush and I'm just going to lightly, lightly paint under his eyes. This is too high of an exposure. You won't be able to see this, but on the top right, there's a little brush. It's supposed to adjust the midtones, which we talked about. The midtones to the middle, so shadows of the darkest part of the image, highlights of the lightest part of the image. We want to bring our exposure down, so let's say like 22. And then now we can paint over his eyes, bring that up a little bit because we all need to sleep more and have raccoon eyes. That's still too much. Let's bring it down some more. And so to do that, you just brighten underneath folks' eyes a little bit, get a little light in their eyes. And it seems like nothing's happening right now, but if I just turn this layer off and on, look at that change. Your eye bags are designer, I'm dead. I know folks are mad because apparently Telfair bags are more expensive. I don't know. Sorry, I don't have any control over that. It's unfortunate. So first I would do that. Then I would use this thing called the mixer brush. This is like, you're about to be confused because I was hella confused the first time I used this. But the mixer brush is this tool that allows you, this is how people be fixing their face. It allows you to like essentially drag colors a little bit. I'm just going to show you how I use it, and I can, if someone DMs me, I'll show you later. But essentially, I would recommend using, I use the Lightroom Classic for whenever I photograph for Kamal's show or any big jobs, like I photograph like stills for a TV show or something, or for a movie, because I have a bunch of photos that I'm never going to use again. I'm just trying to manage them, edit them. But if it's photos that I'm going to use again for jobs, I use cloud-based Lightroom. So first, I'm going to just pick this spot and we're going to start dragging. And you're like, this looks terrible. I know it does, but you'll see what I'm doing in a second. Just figured I might as well leave something to blow y'all's mind a little bit. I'm continuing to hold Option to pick a new source point. But I'm essentially making this like very ghoulish version of Kurt for a second, and you'll see why. The people that have done makeup professionally know what I'm doing, but the people that don't are like, what in tarnation is going on here? This is something I learned when I had to do headshots when I worked at Walker & Company, or which was otherwise known as Bevel. But I just wanted y'all to see that, like, this is, for example, something you wouldn't do in Lightroom because you don't have that capability. Okay, so you're like, what are we doing, right? This is terrifying, right? This is the mixer brush. So one little Photoshop pro tip is every tool, if they have has tools underneath it, right? So if you right click on a tool, you'll see like, what is all this? Underneath brush, there's a mixer brush. Now we're gonna take this layer, take it off. You're like, okay, whatever. Let's take this layer, let's bring it all the way down. But if you see as we brighten it up, look at how it's changing his skin, right? All you're trying to do It's just gonna make a little contour. Look at this before and after. It's giving me a little bit of shift. That's it. So this is something that I would do in Photoshop and not in Lightroom. This is something we can go over at a different time. It's kind of like a advanced technique. I did it super sloppy, but I just wanted you to see like, oh no, Melissa, your face looks great. I can't see it, but I believe that it looks amazing. But this example is something that I would do in Photoshop and not in Lightroom, right? So I'm gonna stop. We're like well over, but I'm gonna go 5 minutes real quick. Thank you everybody for coming. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram. My name is a unit, so I'm really easy to find. You can find me on YouTube. YouTube will be the thing that's most educational for you, and Discord, you can ask more questions that I can make screen records for. What I do want to say is a couple quick things. You do not need to quit your job to be a photographer. You are an artist already through your effort. A. B, lean on your community to find opportunities for you to work on things. Everything you practice, every time you do it is more helpful. I did a lot of editorial jobs. I was a journalism major. I did photographed a lot of things for my college newspaper. And in doing that, I got practice doing things poorly often, but just getting those reps is super important. So for example, last week, I photographed a job for Citizens Bank. So I'm gonna show y'all, Polly, if you could actually stop screen sharing, because I am not allowed to show this yet. But I think it's helpful for folks to see it. I don't know if that's allowed. See if we can, great.
I just turned off your video. Does that help?
No, because I'm going to show you something like.
Oh, okay. Sorry, you meant recording. Yes, I'll pause it.
Stop the,
Sorry.
pause the recording.